My name is Jonathan Gilliam.
And this is The Experts.
This is Jonathan Gilliam, and this is The Experts on Facebook Live, Twitter, and now YouTube. Let me turn this down a little bit. Well, I got a whole lot of stuff going on here, folks. As always, a little bit of technical difficulties getting up. Working with all three of these platforms is always a challenge. It's been a busy day for me, working. Struggling to get back here to do this show, and then I got to go to Sirius XM Patriot channel here in just a little bit for Patriot Tonight to host that show. It's been a somewhat busy news day, but in reality, I mean, we have a terrorist attack, okay? But I don't know, maybe is it just me, or does it seem like even busy news days now, unless it's really hitting the fan, it's just another news day? Yeah, it's interesting how that works. So even when we look at the mainstream media and what they're looking at, kind of looks like a dull day. Well, let's talk about it. Well, the good thing is that I feel like I hit the red button. I feel sick. I'm not going to lie to you. I go to Sirius 2 days. I haven't been sick since last year sometime. But, man, I think this light's too bright now. I went to Sirius for 2 days, and I guess my immune system can't handle it. Hold on one second here. Let me turn this down. There you go. I think that's better. So, dealing with a little bit of sickness and a lot of work, little technical difficulties, but I managed to remember to hit the on-air button on this Tascam box. So let's go ahead and talk real quick about this terrorist attack that happened in Flint, Michigan. It's interesting, folks, how this individual came over from Canada, right? So, as I've always said, logistically, one of the things about attacking the United States and why we're not attacked that often is because logistically, it's difficult to attack us. That still looks pretty bright. Maybe it's because I'm leaning forward. I don't know. There you go. That's better. You see, when I don't feel good, I don't give a crap. So that's why I'm not worried about how professional the show is today. So, so we talk about all the time about ISIS and about politics and the real national security threat. And what I find interesting, though, and what we really need to concentrate on in this country is regardless of a wall, if we have neighbors that have bad or little to no immigration policies where they just welcome people in, which Canada does. Canada has terrible immigration policies. Mexico has terrible immigration policies. If we don't have some way to protect ourselves and to secure these borders, this is going to happen. This guy, the reason I'm saying this is this guy came over from Canada and apparently was yelling Allah Akbar and saying stuff about the fact that we had killed people in Syria. Obviously, this idiot doesn't realize that we're over there trying to save people from killers in Syria. And Although I really don't know why we're in Syria. I think we should just be completely out of it and give this guy his wish where we're not even in Syria. The Middle East, I'm telling you, folks, the more I deal with this nonsense and I see the reality of what's going on since I got out of official service. Look how far I'm leaning like I'm in prison right now, and you're about to steal my food. But as I got out of the FBI and I reflect back on all the things that I've done and the reality of how good we are at what we do, it's interesting because I don't know why we're so dead set on the Middle East. As I talked to somebody yesterday on it was one of the congressmen on Sirius, was talking about how we are oil. We're no longer oil dependent on the Middle East. That we now, because President Trump has opened up the drilling and fracking and all this stuff, we're no longer energy dependent as far as oil goes in this country. In fact, we export a lot of our oil now. We have so much of it now. That still doesn't mean we should take the Middle East for granted. But really, if we sit back and we look at the reality of what's going on in the Middle East, it's funny because people always, the liberals always say, we can't police the whole world. We shouldn't be involved in this stuff. Yet they want to make sure that we allow all these immigrants and refugees. Remember, there's really no difference between an immigrant and a refugee as far as screening goes. Big difference in maybe the motivation of why they're coming here. But the reality is there's little difference in a lot of these people, the way that they're screened, whether they're a refugee or immigrant. But the liberals want to scream about, we got to let these people in. We should be letting more of them in. We should save their lives. Well, look, we either police the world or we don't police the world. Okay, it's one of the two things. But the thing with the Middle East is, I try not to sound like some kind of conspiracy theory fruitcake on here, but look, this is a reality with the Middle East. It's a disaster. And it's a disaster because, and I could say this because I grew up in a trailer, okay? I grew up poor. The Middle East is like a trailer park, somebody who grew up poor and, doesn't do anything and lives off the government. And not that everybody in a trailer park lives off the government, but, and then they win the lottery. All right. And all of a sudden they have the money to go out and buy the latest and greatest weaponry. And then what happens, the same thing that happens with all people who come into money fast. Whatever their eccentricity is, it becomes who they are. It just takes over the people. And they start, I one of my first clients my first client that I had when I left the FBI doing crisis management, the guy ended up killing himself. And he was a very, very rich doctor. At one point, he was very rich. By the time I got in there to do crisis management for this individual, it was the company was a disaster, full of criminals. His life was was just a disaster. No standard operating procedures for him or his family. And this is something interesting. For the first time, Twitter has more viewers than Facebook. That's interesting. All right, well, everybody make sure you're sharing this show. YouTube is not the same. Let me see how many people. I'm sorry, I keep stopping when I'm talking here. I don't know how many people we have on here viewing. It's not telling me, but anyway. So this doctor his life was destroyed. And basically the reason why his life was destroyed because he got so much money that whatever he wanted to do, whenever he wanted to do, he just did it. And that's a problem. Okay, because when you have enough money to make your eccentricities real, it's just going to get worse and worse. They're going to have more and more of a hold on you. So that's the way I look at the Middle East. The Middle East, we discovered oil over there. Most of those places were colonies. We ended up, stacking the decks and giving them their money and all that stuff back. And it was very similar to people who have nothing and win the lottery. And most of those people are bankrupt within 2 years. It's the truth if you don't know that. So the Middle East is a disaster. It's a disaster because they have enough money to fund these fundamental Muslims who everybody wants to call radicals. Everybody wants to call extremists, but how can you call somebody an extremist if they're practicing the exact same ideology as the person that founded that religion? If I was to do critical thinking and deductive reasoning, I would have to come to the point to say, well, if the founder of that religion was this extreme, and people that in modern day are doing the same tactics, techniques, and procedures, have the same belief system, maybe they're not radical. Maybe the whole belief system is a bit radical. Who is the founder? Somebody's asking me on Twitter who the founder of Islam is. That would be Muhammad. He's the guy who basically funneled whatever Islam was before into modern day Islam. So interesting. So anyway, when you have something like this, it's no different than in the inner city or in a trailer park. I know, listen, there's good people that live in trailer parks. I'm not putting everybody down lives in a trailer park, or everybody lives in the inner city. But where there's poverty, you're going to have these massive problems, okay? Law enforcement can't go and just clean up a trailer park or a inner city area. Baltimore is a perfect example. The people have to want to change. Cops can only do so much, and by and large, the way politics work now is if cops go in and I don't know, for 6 months they go in there and they get in shootouts and everything's justified and everything the cops do is right, tactically right, but the cops are being spit on, slapped, fought, beat up, shot at. And then one night they go in and they get a guy, I'm just using a hypothetical here, who may have a gun license, and he has a gun in his belt line, and he looks like somebody who robbed the store. And when they approach his car, he says, "Oh yeah, I've got a gun," and then he goes down and reaches for the gun, whether it's the shirt or whatever he does, and he gets shot. Okay, and now all of a sudden the cops are bad guys and they shouldn't be there and they're overreacting, but nobody ever takes into account. And I know, because when I was on CNN for the period of time that I was, it was every single week they wanted me to comment just so I could get beat up, which never worked for anybody because I was always right. They wanted me to comment on a white police officer shooting a black man. And I didn't really like to look at the color of who the person was. I looked at the crime and the lifestyle that those people were living. And by and large, even when they weren't guilty of a crime, they were still living a lifestyle and in it where they're smoking dope, or they're rebellious against the cops, or they're pulling out a gun when they have a legal license to carry it. But the cop stand there. He says, "I have a license to carry a gun. I'm armed." He says, "Okay, well, don't reach for it." And then you hear the cop saying, "Don't reach for it," and then he shoots the guy. That's what the Orlando Castile guy, I think, is what his name was. It's the same thing with the Middle East. The Middle East is such a disaster because they got so much money, and at one point that their belief system was able to be propped up and boosted like nothing else in history for Islam. So basically what's happened now is all these countries that have bad immigration policies, for whatever reason, I think it's because they want voting. I think Angela Merkel, President Obama, all these different people, they wanted to bring in all these extra refugees because they want to change the voting structure of their countries. And they know they can bring these people in. And it's like everything else I've been talking about all week. Hey, listen, we're going to take care of you. We're like family. And then they bring them in, and then, "Oh, hey, could you do this favor for us? Could you vote for Democrats?" I mean, listen, that's the main reason why the Democrats milk up to minorities, which I don't believe in that term, minority and majority status. You're American. I don't care what color or gender you are or sexuality. So anyway, the Democrats love to break those things up into different, genders, different races, different sexualities, all these different things. And then they categorize them as minorities, and then they, when they bring people in that are from another country, they like to milk them in, and then they milk all those people to try to get them to vote for them by saying, "Hey, we're the best for you." So anyway, I got to stop looking at Twitter because Twitter inevitably is going to have somebody that says something smart ass on there. So, but anyway, because I can't stand here too long. I said that yesterday. I was almost late getting there for the show. So, what I'm getting at here is these countries that have terrible immigration laws that border us. Whereas I say that bad policies and bad politics are really, and the criminal politicians that we have and their criminal political appointees like James Comey and all the rest of these people that they put into place that are creepy and slimy and you'd never want to hang out with. I don't care if you're liberal or conservative. You wouldn't want to hang out with James Comey. That guy's oddball, okay? And the same thing with Mueller and most of these political appointees. So those people are the biggest national security threat that we have. You know, largely fed by Harvard and Yale and all these other Ivy League schools where they for some reason, they've gotten this reputation that if you go and pay, if you do extremely well on your tests or for whatever reason you get into these Ivy League schools and then you pay a massive amount of money, all of a sudden you're some kind of supreme genius. You know more about tactics, techniques, and procedures for fighting terrorism than somebody who's been in the trenches as a SEAL or Special Forces or a Ranger. You know, that's crap is what that is. But people bought off on that. And so when you say, hey, I was a SEAL, they say, oh, that's great. So that person was in Harvard. Let's listen to what that person at Harvard has to say about fighting the war on terror. I mean, really? That's just freaking stupid, really, is what that is. Freaking stupid. I don't know if that's a term that we would normally use in radio and television, but it's pretty ridiculous. So those are, to me, that's the biggest national security threat that we have in this country. But the biggest vulnerability that we have are these countries that border the United States, because by and large, getting stuff into the United States is logistically very difficult. It's very difficult to get people. Let me say this one thing. Somebody said it needs to be a balance of the two. I'm assuming that you're talking about Harvard and operators. Why doesn't Harvard, instead of looking for these squeaky clean little rich kids to go to Harvard, why aren't they reaching out and looking for people who have real operational backgrounds and saying, we want you to come here. We want you to be a part of this. Well, quite frankly, I think it's because Harvard doesn't want that. Liberals, and again, I'm not trying to criticize our good friends that are, our free thinkers that are liberals. I'm categorizing, the extreme left and like the educational sector, the Democratic Party. They don't want operators in there because what they're going to get is people that say, no, that's not correct. What you're teaching is not right. And it's not setting people up for success. It's not good for the country. Well, they don't want that. You see the same thing when you have a bad boss and you go in, you know more than they do. And you go in and you say, well, I think it would work out if we did it this way, and this way. And they go, no, what we're going to do is they don't even consider what you said. I know people have had bosses. You can give me some hearts or thumbs up if you know what I'm talking about. I think just about everybody's had some of those bosses. But they're always the people who somehow get to the top because they kiss enough ass and somehow finagle their way up there and they're yes men and yes women. And it's probably the most aggravating thing I ever dealt with. I got out of the FBI because of that. Jeff Ringel was one of those types of bosses. Stan Reagan. These guys are all retired now, so I don't care to say their names. It doesn't really matter. But there was other people, just like Mueller, just like Comey. So anyway, all these things are huge national security threats for this country. The vulnerabilities are these different countries that border ours and have terrible immigration policies and allow these people to milk themselves in, and then also our own terrible immigration policy. So you see how this guy that attacked Flint, Michigan airport is directly related. This attack today is directly related to bad immigration policies. What happened in Orlando? Directly related to bad immigration policy. Yeah, that guy that did the attack in Orlando is an American citizen. His father, however, was not. His father was a refugee, and his father was an extremist that ran for president for Pakistan and was a believer in the Taliban. Okay, so you see how it may not be this generation. It may be the next one or the next generation The people that committed 9/11, that was all due to bad immigration policies and bad policies overall about how we screen passengers and who we allow to come into this country and train just to fly an airplane and not land it. I mean, our immigration policies should be so strict that if you, first and foremost, can't get screened properly and the questions can't be answered of who are you? Where did you come from? Do you have a phone number that we can track? Do you have an address we can look at? Is there any way we can look at your police records? If there is not, you don't come to this country. That's the way it should be. Look again, the liberals say we shouldn't be policing the world. Okay, maybe I agree with that, maybe I don't. But if you're going to have that stance, then how can we allow people to just filter right in this country with no background check, with no accurate ability to screen who these people are, who they're associated with, what their belief system is? Because it may not be them, it may be generational. I don't know too much about this guy that committed this attack in Flint, Michigan today, but he was from Canada. He came over here and committed this attack. I don't know where, and we're going to find out more about this guy, but I don't know where he came from before that, if he was an immigrant to or a refugee that went to Canada, or if he's a second generation or third generation. I don't know yet. So you see now how all this stuff is so wrapped up in the same thing. We like to call this terrorism. We like to, people like to say this was, CNN loves to call stuff white supremacy. But when you look at these attacks, you look at San Bernardino, immigration failure. You look at the Sarnaff brothers, immigration failure, and a failure by the FBI Joint Terrorism Task Force here in New York City, not to properly screen the two brothers. So, and part of that has to do with the bad policies laid out in the Dialogue, which is the investigative Bible that we use, and that was updated under Mueller and took out the words like, although I don't even believe in that word, but extremist and Muslim and all these things. Lone wolf. I'm glad somebody put that term up there. The reality is a lone wolf is somebody like the guy that attacked the African-American church in South Carolina. That guy's a lone wolf. He didn't necessarily associate with other white supremacy groups. In fact, they cast him away, and they didn't want anything to do with him. That guy took it upon himself to go start something, his own ideology, and do it that way. I would have to say Klebold and Harris, the guys that shot up Columbine, those are lone wolves. What you see with Islam, though, when somebody commits something in the name of Islam, they are not a lone wolf. They are a homegrown operative, or they are just an operative of Islam. Islam is actively telling people to go out and kill, to go out and commit jihad. So you can't really say they're a lone wolf. They're not lone. They're just people who decided to go on a jihad that believe in Islam. So there's a problem there. And of course, the media, and looks like I'm frozen on Twitter. The media and people like that. Let me see here. That might just be my phone. I broke my phone. Look at that. Well, you can't even see it. It's frozen. Frozen with my mouth open. We'll just reboot this thing. What I did was I got my old iPhone. That's why it's so small. How do we ever survive with phones this small? So I got my old iPhone, and I'm using that for my Twitter. So anyway, all these things go back to immigration failures. They also go back to a failure to properly fight the war on terror. It also goes back to the failure to fight the war on drugs, because the same tactics, techniques, and procedures used by cartel members to get their people and their drugs into the United States are also being utilized by the same people that smuggle these or traffic these humans or smuggle these humans in there into the United States. The same process is being used. The same channels, the same diversionary tactics, the same routes, everything. The same people are getting some of these people over illegally. At the same time, though, a lot of these people come over legally. Not every drug dealer comes across the border, or every person that wants to enter the system illegally will come in. A lot of these people will come in on visas, and then they'll overstay the visa, and they just disappear. They know the system works. They know the system's broken, and then they milk the system that way. And so same people that did it with the war on drugs, we had our chance to fix it then. We didn't. The same people with the global war on terror, we had the opportunity to fix it starting back before 9/11, really all the way back to 1979. We should have seen the potential of this when Syed Qutb and Osama bin Laden were all talking about global jihad. We should have figured it out then. We didn't. And then as things started to become more focused on the United States, 9/11 happened. We didn't fix it then either. So I don't know. It's interesting. I think people should look at this. Again, I always go a little bit off the radar when we have something like this happen, because what the news is reporting, they're reporting that he yelled Allah Akbar, that he came over from Canada. So what people are going to say is, oh, he's another Islamic terrorist or radical or lone wolf, when the reality is the person is an operative of Islam, and he utilized our lack of immigration policies on both Canada and the United States sides to come over and commit this attack. That's the reality of the whole thing. What do you all think? Let me look here. What is up with this phone? You know what it is? Apple knows that I turned on an old iPhone, and so they're going to try to destroy it. I really think that Apple has a way at 2 years to send a program into your phone so that it mysteriously starts functioning like crap. Here's another thing. I'm not going to get into conspiracy theories, but I got to tell you, it's very interesting to me. I really need to sit down and chart this. If somebody wants to chart this for me and send me a chart via the email, if you're not on Facebook or Twitter, actually the best way to send it to me would be jonathantgilliam.com. And make a chart, look at all the different terrorist attacks, if you're good at analyzing stuff, and make a chart of all the terrorist things that have occurred over the past, 2 years, and then chart alongside it all the political issues that we've had with the Democratic Party. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'm trying to rack my brain here. I know that we had the Democrats lost horribly last night. We had a terrorist attack today. Comey's testimony, there was a terrorist attack over in, was that in London Bridge? I'm pretty sure there's more than just these two where it goes back, and we have a bunch of these attacks that coincide with losses with the Democratic Party or something. I know that's a little conspiratorial, but I mean, it's kind of interesting. I don't know. All right, so anybody else got anything? I don't know what. I'm going to have to turn my other phone on to look at Twitter. I don't know what's wrong with this phone. There it goes. Nope. Yep. Maybe. All right, let's see here. Let me look at Facebook while that's coming up. Well, Joe, if you can find that meme, send it to me. Or put it on Friends of Jonathan T. Gilliam. There we go. We got Twitter back up. $44 people on Twitter now. 43. Okay, so don't forget, you got to share this show. I already shared it 3 times, as I always do every night. Make sure you share it. Make sure you tell people who've never watched this show to come over and watch it. It's an alternative to mainstream media. And we look for the truth here. That's what our guide is. That's what our narrative is the truth. We have no narrative. It's just whatever the truth is. Sometimes I'll speculate about stuff like I just did about this this odd thing that I just swear every time I hear about a Democratic loss, I hear about a terrorist attack. Let's see what else you got. Yeah, the last night they lost in South Carolina and in Georgia. Now that, I don't know if you followed that special election in Georgia, but that was the most expensive congressional race in the history of the United States. $50 million. That was a lot of money, of outside money, and that's what ticked off these people in Georgia, was that they didn't agree with outside money coming in to do this election. I'd really like to know where that outside money was coming in, where it came from. $50 million, that's a lot of money. The Democratic Party is not just going to throw that out there for one win. And by and large, why would the Democratic Party pick somebody who's 30-something years old, who's done nothing? That's the other thing. Look, there's plenty of veterans out there that have served for 10 years and have a college degree, and they're 30-something, and they're wise individuals. Why would you choose somebody like that? Well, because, again, just like we were talking about Harvard, they're free thinkers. It was a good, successful win for the Trump administration because I think people are starting to see that how ridiculous this is. That they're not trying to win so they can do what's best for the country. They're trying to win so they can keep their party in power or give their party a boost. So let me see here. I got to go here in just a second, though. Rosie O'Donnell. Where'd you go, dog? So Dave Rabin, new to the show. He's completely agreeing with me. I'm a disabled combat veteran, and we'll listen to the show. Thank you, Dave. We appreciate your attendance on this show, and your opinion matters. That's the opinion that I'm looking for right there. Thank you, Dave. Renee says it's just terrorist attacks are getting more and more frequent and the Dems are always losing. Well, both of those are true, and that may just be the facts. All right, I'm going to get out of here. I know I keep saying that. Let's go to the Truth Zone. I was going to bring Rico over here, but he just stepped out for a moment. He has to take a potty break. All right. Let's see here. Sorry for my lack of energy tonight, but I'm just not feeling that good. And quite frankly, the news today was kind of lame a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, but I need to have a longer show to get in this because the reality is, plus I'm on at 9 o'clock at night. I don't know about you all, how it works for you all, but even when I was in the SEAL teams and I knew we were going to get our asses handed to us the next day, I would still stay up until 1 o'clock in the morning, get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, and get up and go because I'm just awake at night. As soon as that sun goes down, I'm awake. I'm very relaxed during the day, and it doesn't make for good riding, that's for sure. I don't know about you all, but when it comes to riding, I like, you know how you feel right when you get a coffee buzz and you're like, I could do anything right now. I could run a marathon or lift like crazy. I could write. I'm pretty sure I could fly if I jumped off the back of the building. No, I'm just kidding about that. But when I drink coffee, I have the same feeling as when the sun goes down. Some reason, boom, I get awake. And I think it has to do with the fact that it's the end of the day. And I work best under a crunch. I work the best when I'm under a deadline. And when the day's almost over, it's like all of a sudden I got to get everything done right then. Clean the house, got to get it. Well, house, I live in a New York apartment. Clean the room, I got to get everything done. You know, it's like I'm going to write a whole book within the 3-4 hours before I go to sleep, you know. Yeah, there's a lot of vampires that watch this show, evidently. Except we don't drink blood. We just crush the Democratic Party. Okay. We are going to go to the Truth Zone. Now I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to jump on my scooter, and I'm going to ride down to... You want to come over here? Let's see if he comes around. If he does, I'll pick him up. Come here. We're not going to wait on that old dog. Well, we pretty much said everything today. But let me just say this. If dogs ruled the world, we wouldn't be worrying about all this stuff. I rode by a dog today, a little dog. I was on my scooter. I rode by this little dog in Central Park, and that dog acted like he was going to eat me up. It actually shocked me. He barked so loud and kind of lunged at me as I went by. If we fought our enemies with that same ferocious, vigorous, and confidential stance, there would be no war. That is the lost art of war that we have lost, is our ability to just say, you know, we're not going to take this, and immediately pounce. If I had been elected president, not saying Trump's not doing a good job, but if I had been elected president, while I was giving my acceptance speech, I would have bombed North Korea. I would have bombed so many places in Syria to blow up ISIS. I would have already had a plan with the Secretary of Defense, the acting Secretary of Defense, that we were going to go in and lay waste to these people while I'm giving my speech. They would have never expected that. And I was actually reminded of that. I was thinking about this before, but I was reminded of it as I rode by that dog. I didn't expect that little dog to jump out at me. And quite frankly, he could have made me crash on my scooter, and I could have gotten hurt. And then he could have come over and mauled me, even though he was little. I know you would have done that. The fact is, folks, if we don't start acting on some of this stuff, like immigration, like fighting for real, not just tapping over here and hitting over there, if a citizenry of this country doesn't start picking better people to listen to and literally slamming the mainstream media, including Fox News, when they put these absolutely ridiculously incompetent 25-year-olds on television to tell us how it is, or journalists that have never served to tell us how we should fight, or politicians that you vote for. Al Franken was a comedian. I think Kathy Griffin has shown us what comedians are capable of. And yet he gets elected again and again. All of this, all of it, comes back to the fact that the American citizenry has lost that same oomph that I'm talking about, that little dog had. They've lost it. The American citizenry, if we were one and we worked together as one people, we would be the ones that are saying, you will attack this. We want this. Or you're not going to get elected anymore. Or else we're going to revolt. Folks, we don't need a revolution in this country. We need a revolvolution. We need to revolve and go back to the way that we were when a very small group of men flipped the bird to Great Britain and said, we're not going to live under tyranny anymore. And they came over and started their own country. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is Rico, 17-year-old Jack Russell that just refuses to get old. This is The Experts, and we'll see you tomorrow. The truth has arrived. I'll see you tonight on Patriot, 125, 9 p.m. Be there.
Don't forget to go to the GoFundMe page. It keeps scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Don't be one of those people that writes me and says, hey, what's that GoFundMe address? I want to donate. It's on the screen the entire hour. Come on. Man, damn. What do I gotta do? You guys have to donate and fund it. See, it's right there on the bottom of the screen right now. Hey, tell them, big guy. Tell them what they need to do.
You need to go to gofund.me/The Experts Roadshow. You don't want this little Jack Russell guy coming after you.
You don't want that. You don't want none of this.
Yeah, what he said. Okay, hey, I'll see you guys tonight on SiriusXM Patriot Channel 125. And one thing I do want to say, I'm going to let Jonathan say this. Hold on.
One thing I do want to say, I see that Facebook put this rainbow flag down here now that people can spread that, whatever it is. Christians in this country, you need to stop following the corporate Jesus, and you need to start following the real Jesus, and you need to take that flag back. That flag belonged to Christianity long before it belonged to the gay movement. And if you're gay and you're a Christian, first of all, I don't care who you sleep with. If you want to define yourself by that, whatever. If you're a Christian, I don't care who you sleep with. That should upset you. That flag, that rainbow, that belongs to us. That was a symbol from God to say that he wouldn't destroy the world anymore by flood. Has nothing to do with sexuality. You better start standing up, folks.